Aloha, I'm Council Vice Chair Kipukai Kualii, and with me today is...
Council Member Bernard Carvalho.
And we're here to do the Roundup for Council Chair Raposo, who couldn't be here today. It's actually his 60th birthday
60th
today.
birthday.
Happy 60th
birthday.
birthday, and he's over getting ready for his event tonight. So we're filling in as a duo for him. We did have a certificate. This is for our meeting, just Wednesday. On September 4th. We had a certificate for Peleke Flores. He's the lead person there at Malama Huleia, working on the Alekoko Pond restoration for a few years now. He got the Ellison Onizuka Memorial Award with the National Education Association. So the National Education Association, or NEA, is the teachers union, the international union across the country. And they had their big annual convention in Philadelphia. And at this convention, they gave out 8 awards across the country. And Peleke got one of those awards for the work that he does. So quite a big honor. And he told us he got to go to Philadelphia as well to the convention to receive that award. So Peleke is basically a cultural practitioner doing all this really important work.
Very humble, and
very
at the
humble,
same time getting
Hawaiian
things done and really taking care of the Aina and working
inspiring
close with
our youth,
kids. Our youth, that was
educating our youth,
very inspirational.
The culture and adults as well. They've had big cleanup days where everyone shows up and
he was
does
very
the work
involved
together
with our signage program, or Moku, Aina Moku program as well. So is very involved, and we really appreciate him and what he's done for Mahalapu and all that.
Yeah, and absolutely in my comments, I congratulated him and gave him a big mahalo for the work that he does. And he's not only restoring the fish pond and inspiring others to restore other special places, heiau and streams and all of that, but in that he's restoring our culture to some certain degree with our youth and adults as well. So big congratulations to Peleke Flores at Malama Huleia. Then we started our day with the Public Works and Veteran Services Committee, and their first item was a briefing from the Department of Water, and the water director, the head of water there, and the chief engineer came to give us an update. And basically they had a pretty thorough presentation, and it just showed what a challenge they have. They have projected cost of necessary improvements to the water infrastructure, something like $1.3 billion. And then they're hoping to put aside and work on like $54 million a year in the CIP investments, and then build out to maintain and improve our water systems. Of course, everyone talked about water and the importance for building housing and development.
Yes, and development. That was always the big part, right? And I really, the information that was shared with us is very thorough and very well laid out. It really covered our entire island, each moku, going back to the moku system, and really kind of gave us a good understanding and idea of where we're at, what is needed, and what is already accomplished, not accomplished, and needs to be done. I think that's the big part.
They showed maps of where all the different needs are, where they can get the biggest bang for the buck, different color-coded areas. And then I asked questions around development in Lihue and how important that is, not with wastewater also, but with water, and how those two infrastructures is necessary for our future development of housing, and that Grow Farm is making lands available, selling lands to like the State Department of Hawaiian Homelands, to the county, and maybe to other affordable housing developers. The land is not going to be the challenge as far as having land for affordable housing, but and the other infrastructure is in place, right? Like our our roadways.
There's already
You know,
infrastructure in place.
yeah.
It's just
But the water is
making
a
sure.
challenge. And then with the lawsuits that the department has been facing, they did say that they're moving with the environmental impact statement that they're working on with RM Towel, I think, is the contractor working with them on that. And so they're trying to keep things moving. It might still take a couple of years, but the hope is that we can get to that place with the water. And you know, Councilmember Carvalho, we've been talking, you, Chair, and I have been talking with the state DHHL
Yep.
also on the wastewater, and
Wastewater is
water.
another whole other.
Because when DHHL finalizes their land purchase, I think something like 300
300
acres
acres.
behind Immaculate Conception
Yeah.
School right there in Isenberg Park in Lihue. Their plan over the next several years, maybe even 5, 10
Five.
plus more years, is to build a whole community back there,
Community.
practically.
Hawaiian
You
homes
know,
right behind
Hawaiian
there.
homes, maybe
Centrally
1,000
located,
as
right?
over time, maybe
I think
1,000
that's
homes, get people off the wait list.
the
So
wait list.
I was happy to hear Joe Tate, the director of the head of water there, say too that they're working closely with the Department of Hawaiian Homelands because they support to getting more housing to our Hawaiians and getting people off the wait
We've been,
list.
we've been went into discussion on water for agriculture. Remember, we were talking some of the people coming up and speaking. I mean, water in general. So we have to kind of clarify this is water here, this was how it's done here, wastewater here, you know, all of that. So that was a good discussion.
One of the things I think Joe Tate had pointed out that he's the 7th manager there at our Department of Water
Yeah.
in 8 years. So as you might imagine, all of that turnover kind of didn't help with the challenges as well. And then he did say that from their prior water plan, the current plan that's been in place, I think, for quite a while, that they only accomplished 40%. So they're behind. They have a lot of work to do, and it's going to take a lot of investment in the future. So going after federal
Yeah,
funds probably, and you know.
I think that's the big thing. We have a solid base at home, but federal, state, county, or you know, the funding and the resources, that's what we need to reach out for and bring home. But we need a solid plan in place, and I believe with the presentation that was done, it was well laid out, and we can at least have a starting point from that.
They talked about the facilities reserve
Reserve.
charge, which is basically the fee you pay for a water meter, and I think it's something like 14,000. So it's kind of high, and a lot of people find that to be really challenging. But they did say that they're looking at basically overhauling the system of how they charge those fees, and possibly looking at the specifics of the unit, you know,
Yes.
how many, how much water they're actually using, right? If it's a bigger house with more bedrooms and more bathrooms, it's going to be using more water. So instead of a flat fee for everyone, maybe
Right.
something that's more
And then
graduated.
looking at homes that do qualify for
Fair.
additional dwelling units for family and you know all of that. So that's a big part as well.
And of course, when it comes to the housing part of it too, the council has been looking at, when it comes to affordable housing, looking at ways of subsidizing affordable housing projects with a lot of the different fees.
Yep.
So we could look at the water fees as well. So that was the big update
big
from
one.
water with our planning committee, a public works
Works.
committee. The only other item was Bill 2926, which was an update to the codes.
Building code.
And I think there was minimal discussion on that. Amendments from Councilmember Bulason that Public Works asked for deferral because they needed more time to review some of the new amendments that was coming from Councilmember Bulason. So the item was deferred.
Right.
And then we went on to our
Planning.
planning committee.
Yep.
The planning committee had 2 items. The first one was the item on the Nini Road that we had spoken about before. We had like pretty lengthy discussions before. And that's involving the government road, access road there at the end of Nini Road,
Right.
which crosses a property that has a what would you call it? It's not really a vacation rental, but it's a operation
Operations.
by a association of owners up there on the cliff, and there's been some infringement, if you will, of people getting onto
Right.
the public properties and closing them
Closing them.
off, or growing grass on the beach, and basically using the
Right.
property.
And I think the biggest thing was to clarify and define that fine line, if you will. This is county property. This is what is done and how it's utilized. And then you have private property. So I think that was the biggest part. But all the other things that are happening, within this discussion kind of was placed on the table as well. So I think we got working with the state and other entities to make sure that that's well defined. And the people part
Yeah.
have access.
So our planning director was there,
Yeah.
and then he made it clear that if there's with any violations, which there were some, that they would be on top of it. And then Chair also asked that maybe we should pursue a resolution supporting the requests for a certification of that area to reestablish that indeed it's a public beach,
Sure.
even where they were growing the grass on the sand, because the high wash of the waves goes up beyond that government road. And that absolutely no gates should be put on that road. It's a public road, and no security should be standing outside of that road to prevent, or even give people the appearance that they shouldn't be going through there to get to the beach or the stream, right?
Right.
Because people may
So
be
just access, right? Yeah.
access, yeah, and use, access and use.
Access and use, yeah.
Okay, the other item was the
Kulana.
Kulana subdivision, and we did have the president from the Association of Apartment Owners of Kulana, and basically it was kind of, I guess, a good news
Yeah.
story to show
Very
how they're moving again, and there's at least, what was it, 6 properties or 8
Yes.
properties that are in the permitting
Right.
process and looking to build their homes, their dream homes. This was a subdivision that I guess was embroiled in
There was all this stuff
There was-
happening from going back, when we
the
first started.
prior
There was a little
property owner
timeout,
and
yeah.
developer maybe went
And then a
bankrupt or
timeout,
something.
and now
Yeah.
it's all moving forward, all in a positive way. And that's how we look
Yeah,
at it.
and now the owners themselves are basically the developer. They did
So
say
housing-
too that 20 of the units are available for sale, and that they have that published and everything.
Yes.
And then that was for the planning committee, and then on the public safety committee, we only had one item, and I know you had to step
I had to
away. I
step
don't
away.
even know if you were to be there for the beginning of it. But this was an item following up Chair's certificate from a couple weeks ago, where he recognized 3 volunteer rescue folks who had searched and found, sadly, the body of someone who was missing, who had committed suicide. But this was a request by Chair for a report update from the police department, the fire department, and the Kauai Search and Rescue. The police chief could not be in attendance, and I think the fire chief too, because they had some kind of conference that they were hosting. So they asked for a deferral. So ultimately, this item was deferred. But prior to it being deferred, the chair of Public Safety and Human Services, Councilmember Cowden, did take testimony from the public. I had sort of objected to that, but we were only 3 committee members present, because you were
I had to
missing,
leave
and Councilmember Bulasan was
Bulasan.
missing. So it was just the committee chair and Councilmember Kagawa and myself. So I sat through it, but my objection basically was you're having them testify on an item that we haven't even had the presentation on, and the people that probably needs to hear their testimony, the police, the fire, and the Kauai Search and Rescue, who we knew were going to be criticized because we've seen some of the emails and stuff, and I'm all for them being held accountable, but it didn't make sense when they weren't even in the room. So now we would be asking our police chief and a fire chief to go back, watch a council meeting, try to see the testimony, when it should all happen right there in the room. Nevertheless, the testimony was taken, and ultimately the item was deferred. So the meeting will happen again, and probably this, I told these people too, please come back and testify again so that, you know, the presenters, so they can hear their presentation, but also so that the presenters can hear their testimony. So ultimately, it was deferred. The sad, you know.
But the whole point was that the discussion part should have, everything should have been deferred, right? And then come back to the table after the presentation. Because we talked about this before. And, but anyway, that's what happened. So
We live and we learn.
yeah, keep going.
So in the last, we had the committee of the whole, and we completed 2 bills. One bill was from Council Chair Raposo. It was his bill, and real property tax was there, and the real property tax manager did say that they didn't oppose the bill. He kind of thought it wasn't really necessary, and that he wanted to see the real property tax manager wanted to see DLNR do the extensions to the leases, because there are people living on properties on state land with DLNR leases that on paper is month to month, but in reality they're living there for 20, 30, 40 years, and it's, you know, a long-term
Ongoing,
relationship or reality for their housing. So, but they're not able to qualify for the homesteader exemption unless they have a long-term lease. So, but Chair isn't hopeful that DLNR is going to move on that anytime soon or quickly enough, and he wants to make sure that the people can get a homestead exemption. So that's why he continued to push for this bill, and the 5 members that were present voted in support of the bill. And then the other one was just a refinancing of a bond. So they're getting a better, I think, interest rate, saving us some money. So it was all good things. So we absolutely supported that as well. I think that was it.
That's it?
Yeah, it was a relatively quick meeting. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. And of course, thank you to Hoike for always putting this on. And again, happy birthday to Chair.
Happy birthday, Chair.
See you next week. Aloha. See you guys, everybody. Aloha.
Aloha.